I was making great inroads in the marketing shop. I understood basic marketing concepts, but I also knew how to leverage resources, people, money, and time to get things done. Several projects of mine had come to a successful and widely acclaimed fruition. I was no longer the low man on the totem pole. I was becoming a force to be reckoned with. Seth was the Salt Division's vice president and second in command. He was a stocky, outgoing man with salt and peppery hair and a walrus-thick mustache. My boss, Bob, reported to him. Bob wanted me to gain some exposure and so set up a meeting with Seth where I would present my marketing materials. I knew in some respect this was a mere formality, but Seth was the local power. About this same time, I changed my hairstyle. I had worn my long black hair in a conservative and tailored ponytail or bun on a day-to-day basis. I'd never been one to spend inordinate amount of time fixing, preening, or coiffing. But several years had passed with this square hairstyle, and I needed a change. Instead of an interim haircut or a moderate style change, I opted to go radical, at least radical for me, and got a shoulder length frizz job, an afro. This hair change was so obvious, my coworkers could not help but comment. The verdict was split. I enjoyed the controversy that the event caused, and the new do had the desired effect in my life. It was a change. The day arrived when I was to make my presentation to Seth. I woke early, washed and picked my fro, and arrived at work in time to review my program before I went into the meeting. Bob and I walked into Seth's office. Bob took an armchair. Seth got out from behind his desk and took the other armchair. That left the couch for me. I jumped right into my program and began to expound on the benefits of my marketing plan. I held Bob and Seth spellbound. There were few questions. I cruised to my conclusions. I could feel my heart pumping steadily when I ended. The blood pressure was probably elevated. It had been a good 20 minutes. Having been schooled in sales, when I quit talking, I looked straight at Seth and waited for his response. I worked hard at not talking. Seth stood up slowly and walked towards me. I remained seated. In anticipation of a handshake and the words, "Well done, Koyama, fine job," I reached out my right hand as he approached. Well, Seth did shake my outstretched hand, but in one continuous motion brought his left hand up and patted me on the top of the head, like I was a poodle that had just finished a whole bowl of gravy train. I looked up at him through my curly bangs. He said something, but it didn't register. All I could think is that this man hadn't heard or understood a word I said. He patted me on the head like a dog. Seth supervised our group for another year and then left to work for the competition. We had many interactions, most positive, some not so. But what I remember about him is not whether he was a good manager, leader, or visionary. I remember his impulsive patting me on the head, the demeaning feeling it gave me, and the insight of how Seth perceived me at that moment. I had just presented top-notch work. He saw a 20-something fuzzy-haired young pup. Since then, I've had a myriad of hairstyles, long, short, in between. No matter what style I have, at any given time, I'm able to style it into a severe, formal hairdo. It makes a difference. Perception is reality.
What is your cause? Are you an author with a passion project? Kirkhouse Publishers supports authors who champion a cause. With over 300 books in publication and new titles released every month, Kirkhouse Publishers has the experience to help you champion your cause. Do you have a story that you want to share with others? Kirkhouse Publishers accept submissions in a variety of genres, including fiction, self-help, inspirational, biographies, and more. Find out more at kirkhousepublishers.com.
"Why am I never enough?" she asked. "I hate being me." Those ugly words pierced straight through to my soul. I looked into my 14-year-old daughter's glistening eyes, and I fought back the patronizing maternal cliches that wanted to tumble out of my mouth. Instead, I asked her a simple question. What is enough? She looked at me, perplexed and exhausted, and she let out a long, deep breath, something between a shudder and a sigh. The light from her reading lamp reflected off her tear-stained cheeks as we sat on our bed, close enough to touch, but not actually touching. I wanted to embrace her with every fiber of my being, but I knew she needed some space. So I calmly repeated my question. What is enough, honey? Who gets to decide? She'd just told me about being brutally betrayed by a friend, and she shared her innermost feelings of failure, self-judgment, imperfection, feelings of being less than and not enough. My daughter was broken. She needed my support. She also needed to find perspective. I knew I had to help her find some sort of solution to these feelings of inadequacy. But how? The power of perspective might be the most important pillar of power. Without it, without the power of perspective, it's difficult to tap into the powers we've already talked about. The power of resilience, authenticity, priority, people, grace, voice. So let's take time to explore this key power, shall we? You see, a lack of perspective, it's not exclusive to teenage girls. It's not limited to young people, and certainly not limited to women. It's human to lose perspective. I do believe, however, that we women tend to question our value frequently, if not continuously, throughout life. I see it as I travel the country speaking to women on college campuses and in boardrooms. I hear it from baggage handlers and computer programmers, from students and CEOs. Every day we see women, daughters, mothers, sisters, colleagues, friends. We see these women struggle to find perspective on this unattainable quest for perfection. For example, tweens and teens comparing themselves to unrealistic images as that toxic quest for perfection takes root. Young women crumbling under the pressure of career aspirations and expectations. Moms exhausting themselves trying to create some Pinterest-worthy lifestyle for their children. Professional women striving to attain the perfect work-life balance, as if there were such a thing, and second-guessing themselves every step of the way. Retired women seeking meaning and validation in this new season of life, yet feeling unfulfilled or less than. At times, we each feel left out, less than, not enough. We fail, we fall, we do our best. But seriously, who gets to decide what enough is? How do we, as women, recognize when we are judging ourselves or others too harshly? Where do we find much needed perspective? This is the journal page for Chapter 7, The Pillar of Perspective. What is enough? Who gets to decide? The answer is you. You get to decide what is enough. You get to choose the stories you tell yourself, so make sure they're actually true. You get to remove barriers, set healthy boundaries, and trust your authentic self. You get to define you. Brave, beautiful, powerful, wonderful you. You get to find the power in perspective, and that is something to celebrate.
The Smith family. To illustrate the purpose of this book, I would like to share with you the story of the Smith family. It's important to remember that no two people have the exact same experience with their disease and its treatment. The responses in the Smith family's story are a few of the more common reactions that people who are diagnosed with cancer get from family, friends, and even strangers. So take a look at them and examine why someone would respond that way. This story highlights why knowing what to say and do, as well as what not to say or do, can make a big difference in the lives of patients, their caregivers, and their children. The Smith family diagnoses cancer. Martha Smith had been losing weight, a lot of it. She had no appetite and she'd been training for a marathon, so it didn't alarm her at first. But then the fatigue set in, and one day she woke up and felt too tired to get out of bed. When her husband Greg came home from work that evening, she was still there, yellow and jaundiced. He ordered Martha to the hospital, where the doctor ordered a battery of tests. Martha had stage 4 pancreatic cancer. How could she have cancer? She'd always lived a healthy lifestyle. She was still so young, and they had children at home. How would Greg take care of all of their children alone while Martha was sick? Or worse, if she died? All of these things swam through their minds as they asked the doctor about her chance of survival. The doctor's tone was somber. His face showed little emotion as he explained the situation, balancing hope with the grave reality of Martha's condition. Even though we are treating the cancer, said the doctor, you will need to begin preparing yourselves and your children. Your time is limited. Because her cancer had metastasized, she had a prognosis of 3 to 6 months to live if it was left untreated. 80% of all pancreatic cancer patients die within a year of diagnosis. For stage 4 patients, the picture is even more grim. Martha's treatment options were limited, but it was possible that with the right treatment, her life could be extended. The oncologist presented options ranging from palliative, which is comfort care, to aggressive treatment. Somewhere in between was a combination of traditional chemotherapy combined with a targeted treatment. The targeted treatment would go after specific cancer cells while sparing the healthy cells. This combination was known to increase survival by an average of nearly 6 months. Martha and Greg looked at each other. 6 months. It seemed so short. And yet, in the face of death, 6 months was more precious than gold. Martha and Greg were especially concerned about their kids. They had 3 daughters and a son aged 7 to 17. They needed time. I would like to do the combination treatment, Martha said, trying to hold back her tears. Greg squeezed her hand reassuringly. They could hardly believe that they were having this conversation. In the following weeks, as they told family and friends about Martha's diagnosis, the Smiths were taken aback by the reactions they received. The Midwest Book Awards is looking for the best books published in the Midwest. Finalists and winners are promoted among our growing literary community and invited to participate in ongoing special book promotion opportunities. If you published a book this year, find out more and enter at mipa.org/bookawards.
I'm in western South Dakota, rolling across the prairie in a 1970s blue pickup truck when I first see them. Buffalo, faraway brown dots on a hillside that become massive bodies outside the passenger window as we approach them, their faces accented with beards and curved black horns. They're primeval, ancient, mammoth-like. They have a wise look about them, but also a wildness, as when they flash the whites of their eyes, spin around and gallop off, showing us they'll never be completely tamed. I'm at Great Plains Buffalo Company, a ranch where Phil and Jill Jurdy and their children raise more than 1,000 grass-fed buffalo. These buffalo will eventually be slaughtered, providing consumers with meat, but they are much more than food sources. They are the keepers of this grassland. With their hooves, they aerate the soil and push seeds into it. With their waste, they fertilize it. Through their grazing habits, they encourage the growth of grass instead of woody plants. They maintain symbiotic relationships with birds and insects. They make the prairie function in a way it hasn't since their ancestors walked it before we converted the Great Plains to corn and soybeans. The buffalo show us what the prairie once was and how humans have changed it, to some destroyed it, and this in turn is a reminder of all the landscapes that we've changed. "Wrong side up," said a Sioux Indian who watched a white sodbuster rip the grassland open with a plow. The Native Americans knew why soil was best left undisturbed. Roots. 25 miles of them in a single square yard of prairie turf just 4 inches deep held the soil in place, had done so for thousands of years. With a single plow swipe, the settlers set it free to blow. Result, the Dust Bowl. Later result, desertification, turning the Great Plains into a desert. Less than 4% of the original tallgrass prairie remains, and those defiant acres are rigorously protected. Still, it is feasible that the tallgrass prairie could be gone before I die. A human being's lifespan is roughly how long it took to destroy 96% of it, which does not bode well for the last 4. But it doesn't have to be this way. The buffalo before me represent a new agriculture that can help restore the prairie and other landscapes without sacrificing the amount of food produced. These animals show us that there are many ways to farm and ranch, that we can change how we define those terms, how we can reverse the damage we have done and create a better agricultural future. The buffalo are walking, breathing proof that human beings do not have to destroy the earth in order to eat.
The sweet stink of vacation. Sometimes a vacation really stinks, and I mean that in both a literal and figurative sense. Here I was on vacation near the pristine Boundary Waters canoe area, flat on my back, contorted under the rear deck of my big boat, arm twisted and bent, reaching far up under the boat's floor, digging in the bilge water for a 3 days dead crappie. A dead crappie in the bilge? For 3 days? Sometimes these things happen. It all started with a dead battery instead of a dead fish. Batteries, especially boat batteries, often die on vacations, timing their demise to cause the most amount of disruption possible and a large unplanned purchase from carefully planned vacation funds. Then comes the hassle of installation. Jury-rigging the new battery into the electrical system without proper tools and facilities left the sliding doors to the gas and battery compartment inoperable, and thus the bilge completely exposed. But we were on vacation, and the crappies were biting. The boat was needed. Son Andy held up a large crappie for his significant other Steph and me to admire, intending to toss it back into the lake to swim another day. A powerful flip ripped it from its grip and to the floor. One more flop and it was gone, straight into the bilge, frantically swimming far up underneath the floor and far out of reach. Now, 3 days later, it was stinking. I should be breathing in clean, fresh air with a hint of pine trees baking in the summer sun while they shade the dock. Clean, fresh air, purified by the early morning rain that soaked the boat carpet and was now soaking through my fishing pants. Pants that smelled a little funky even before they got wet. Pants I had worn for 5 days straight and upon which many things had been spilled. Things like fish fry grease, motor oil, and strong coffee with cream, and maybe just a splash of brandy. The boat had accumulated a few smells long before the crappie incident, smells that could be smelt from my current position. The funk of smilled beer and minnow bucket water, the fishy musk of northern pike slime. Some guys don't even allow these fish into their boats, since their slime coats hands, clothes, nets, and boat floor carpet as they are swung over the gunwale, twisting and flopping, sliming and smelling. For me, it's a smell straight from a childhood spent dreaming of big pike, caught on 2 short summer vacations while trolling pine-scented shores with Dad. It does stink. Tucked under the boat's steering console nearby is another source of stink, a round white foam container with the remains of a dozen night crawlers. Ever lifted the lid on a container of dead night crawlers? You'd remember if you did. The fragrance of a couple dozen old minnows forgotten in a live well is perfume by comparison. Let's call it a stench. I would gladly deal with all of them if this stinking crappie could be pulled from the bilge. I admit defeat, pull my arm carefully back past the fuel lines and water tubes, through the maze of electrical wires and other stuff that comes together in this spot, and yet somehow was navigated by a crappie in a successful escape to a certain death. I roll upright, use the side of the boat for a backrest, and contemplate the stinking situation. My feet smell from too many days in the same wet pair of shoes. My pants have that mixed aroma of all the things previously mentioned. My sweaty t-shirt is stained in all the right places and giving forth the odors that come with the stains. My hands smell like the boat bilge, a combination of boat gas, stagnant water, and long dead crappie. Yes, vacation is really starting to stink. I stand up, grab the red plaid sweatshirt tossed aside at the start of the bilge fishing exercise, and step onto the dock. There the breeze carries the sweet smell of the sun-warmed pines, mixed with subtle overtones of a warm summer afternoon in the forest. And the sweatshirt in my hands adds its own aroma to the mix. Wood smoke with a hint of burnt marshmallows from last night's campfire, mixed with the morning's crispy fried bacon and blueberry pancakes. I hold it to my face and take a deep breath. That's what a vacation is supposed to smell like. Thank you.
All the work featured in this episode is available for purchase at bookshop.org/shop/MiPA. Your purchase from Bookshop directly supports independent booksellers, and when you use MiPA's affiliate link, you're directly supporting MiPA's programming as well. Visit bookshop.org/shop/MiPA.